over time, we have been seeing challenges affecting budgets year in, year out. And these are some of the challenges that we feel government should address during the implementation phase of the budget. One is the issue of accountability. Our colleagues, you know what is happening in the country. Issues of accountability have become a very big concern. So government needs to ensure proper project preparation and accountability. And this affects projects so much. You know, the government should enforce adherence project preparation requirements, including mandatory feasibility and feasibility studies before implementation. We have seen projects that have been affected by this irregular project implementation and lack of feasibility studies, and it has costed government a lot of money. One good example is the Busega MPG Expressway. This road was supposed to be completed, I think, some years back, at a budget of about 500 billion. Right now, the project is not even halfway, and it has already cost government about 1.3 trillion. So there is a need to ensure proper project implementation and preparation in the coming budget. There is also an issue of absorption that we feel government should address. Government should improve absorption of approved project funds. Over the years, we have seen budget performance not after achieving 100%. There is no budget we have had in the last 5 years where government has approved the budget and they have actually financed that budget and spent the money. We find the budget has been approved at 50 billion, and what has been spent is around 48. We have never had a budget where you have 72 trillion budget approved and you have 72 budget spent. So the absorption is a critical issue. And this affects service delivery because some of the projects that have seen this problem is like the USMID program, where we saw an under-absorption of 463 billion. We saw 89 billion not being used under the program, about 0.78 billion for road maintenance grant. You can imagine failing to spend money for road maintenance with the problems we have in the country with roads. 5 trillion for our government is not spent, so the issue of absorption really needs to be addressed in the coming budget, and this can be addressed using the e-procurement. Government has come up because one reason why government is not absorbing money is because of the procurement processes. The procurement is so long. And now procurement is going to be put online, and we shall have e-procurement, which we feel government should use to address such problems. There is also, we should have clearness of contractor areas. The issue of areas. Sometimes you move on roads and you find contractors have abandoned projects. This Savara roundabout that has caused a lot of problem is because of areas. Probably if the contractor was paid in time and the road worked on, we shouldn't be seeing such problems. And when you have areas of contractors, they attract interest. UNRWA alone, when it was transferred to Ministry of Works, had areas of about 1 trillion. And those attract interest every day. Put more pressure on taxpayers' money to just collect money to pay contractors in interest. The issue of supplementary budgeting has been talked about, but we feel in the coming budget, really, government should use the budget the way it is. We have just approved the budget in May. It is going to be ready on Thursday. The new financial year will start on 1st June. In August, you'll see ministries coming to ask for supplementary budget. And you wonder why, because you go through a full year of budgeting. In August, someone comes and says, we want money to pay salaries as a supplementary budget. So, in the coming financial year, those are the things that affect budget credibility and it should be addressed. Lastly, one key area that government should also address is the performance of key programs. Strengthen the performance and the cover of private sector credit. We have so many good programs like PDM, GROW, Small Business Recovery Fund. But when you discuss with people, they are not, apart from PDM, the uptake is not very good. And these programs, most of them are involving funds like PDM. They are not paying back. But that is taxpayers' money being used and not being brought back. So we feel, much as these are very nice programs, PDM, Small Business Recovery Fund, GROW, They are very nice programs, but the money is supposed to come back and benefit other people. We have so far invested about 3 trillion in PDM for the last 3 years. How much have we collected as collected back? Basically, we want to know how much money is in the budget. And for the financial year 25-26, we note that the source envelope for that year is to increase marginally by 0.3%. From 72.1 trillion in the current financial year 24-25 at 72.3 trillion in the next financial year. This 0.3% increase compared to the transition from 25-26, I mean 24-25, last year we saw a 37% increase in the budget, from about 50 to 72. This year we are seeing a 0.3% increase. So we are seeing a smaller increase in this year, but that is basically because last year we had a very big increase because of the expectation of the first oil, which didn't come soon. We also, this modest increase of 0.3% is largely driven by the rise in budget support, which is expected to rise from 1.3 trillion to 2.0 trillion, 2.08 trillion, and domestic borrowing projected to increase from 8.9 trillion to 11.38 trillion. We are seeing a very minor increase in budget support, but a very wide increase in domestic borrowing. This has an implication on the private sector, as my colleagues are going to say it later, because domestic borrowing is basically government borrowing from the domestic economy, borrowing from through the central bank, but also borrowing from the commercial banks. That means that me and you, if we go to the bank, we shall find that the government has already taken much of the money and we shall have less to borrow and less to invest. Well, as we commend the increment, we once again caution the government on its heavy reliance on borrowing, especially from the domestic market, which crowds out the private sector and undermine private sector investment in the country that I've just talked about. When it comes to budget financing, how the budget is going to be financed. The budget will primarily be financed with domestic sources, which will contribute 58.96 trillion, that is 81.5% of the budget. Now, this when compared to last year, the domestic sources contributed 45% to the budget. This year, we are seeing an increment, it is contributing 81%. External financing is projected to contribute 13.54 trillion, which is 18%. Of the total source envelope, 37.23 trillion, which is 52%, is domestic revenue, while 34.82 trillion, 48%, would be mobilized through borrowing. We are also seeing an increment in domestic revenue, especially tax revenue. We now have a target of about 37 trillion. Whether we shall achieve that is another question for another day, but that is the target. But from history, we are seeing that in the last at least 3 years, we have not been hitting those targets, as my colleagues are going to talk about it. Then, budget expenditure. You know, the budget has two sides. It has the revenue side and the expenditure side. And for us, we monitor where the money comes from and where it is going. So the expenditure side, in the next financial year, 25-26, starting 1st July, the resources available for discretionary spending amounts to 40.97 trillion. Colleagues, discretionary expenditure is the money available for Parliament to appropriate to different sectors that affect the day-to-day activities of the economy. This is the money that the Parliament can actually touch, discretionary, they can spend at discretion. While 31.4 trillion is earmarked for statutory expenditure, however, we are deeply concerned about the shrinking fiscal space to address political and government needs and deliver essential public services. Notably, we see that 26.83 trillion, which is about 37%, will go to towards public debt servicing, which is a very huge portion of the budget. So we are seeing 37.2% of the budget going to public debt servicing. That is money going away from the budget. You cannot touch it because that is a contractual obligation. We also see 31 trillion, that is earmarked for statutory expenditure. Now, for it, statutory expenditure is the money that the government cannot touch. It is money like salaries. Money like for contributing to different programs, like the money that Uganda contributes to the African Universe. That is statutory expenditure. It cannot be touched because it is pre-approved. So the money that remains after removing statutory expenditure and the debt servicing money is actually 40 trillion. That's what is going to be used to finance social services in the country: education, health, agriculture, roads. It is only 40 trillion out of the 72 trillion. So that should give you an idea of how the budget looks like. We are saying that that huge money going to debt servicing and statutory spending will significantly limit government's capacity to invest in social sectors and other areas, including infrastructure and job creation. When it comes to the issue of central government vis-a-vis local governments, because we have two levels of government, central and local government. Central government that has ministries and what, then local government that has districts and local governments. We are seeing that central governments are allocated a total of 34.6 trillion, whereas local governments receive 5.5 trillion, which is a Uganda shilling 399 billion, a reduction or 6.7% reduction from the 5.9 trillion that was allocated to local government last year. And from my understanding, most of the service delivery happens at local government level. That is where primary schools are. That is where these feeder roads are. But we are seeing them taking, this is like less than 10% of the budget, which should be the reverse, because we are saying that we are decentralizing. Now, to boost household incomes, which is very key, and support micro enterprise development in the financial year, the government has proposed significant budget allocations to key initiatives like the PDM, that is allocated about 1.07 trillion, in Yoga, 100 billion, the project, the GROW project, 231.3 billion, and other targeted funds for women, youth, and older persons, and persons with disabilities. Health services will receive a substantial funding, including 1.012 trillion for Global Fund, 623 billion for essential medicines and supplies. In agriculture, we are seeing allocations include 176 billion for climate smart funding, 47.6 billion for agriculture credit facility, reflecting the government's focus on inclusive growth, improved livelihoods, and enhanced service delivery. Colleagues, these are the key areas that we picked out, but there are many other financing priorities in the budget, but these are the key that we thought were key for these sectors. Now, the flagship programs or areas for the budget are the ATMs, as I spoke earlier. Now, we want to see how those flagship areas have been financed, because if they are priorities, then we expect the budget to be in that area. They should be prioritized in the budget. We welcome the government strategy of prioritizing the ATMs as a means of achieving the tenfold growth within the next 15 years, where we are going to grow from 500 billion US dollars to, from 50 to 500 in the next 15 years. Whereas the NDP recognizes these sectors as central to Uganda's value addition, job creation, and industrialization agenda, we note with concern the significant financing gap between the NDP for financing target for these programs, the 5 programs, of 3.59 trillion and the budget allocation of 3.55 trillion, leaving a financing gap of 41.3 billion for the ATMs. Specifically, the agro-industrialization program is set to receive only 1.88 trillion against the target of 2.4 trillion. Science and technology will receive Uganda shilling 388 billion against a target of 408 billion. Overall, the ATMs are set to receive 5% of the total budget, which is shortfall of 2% compared to the 7% target in the NDP form. So whereas these areas are priorities for the government, we are seeing they are not being financed as per the NEP4 recommendations, which is a key concern. That could imply that we may not achieve the 500 billion target if we keep financing these areas at this rate.
Our concern is about the declining financing specifically to the Ministry of Agriculture, with an estimated budget of 815 billion for the financial year 2025-2026 from 1.18 trillion in the current financial year. It is worth noting that the transfer, with the rationalization process, which of course happened recently, has had mergers of entities which were taken back to the ministry, mother ministry, like the Cotton Development Authority, the Dairy Development Authority, NADS, and the Uganda Coffee Development Authority. We thought that with this merger and the rationalization process, possibly the budget would have increased. But to our surprise, we know that the Coffee Development Authority, under my including aspects of coffee value addition, standard accreditation, of course, post-service and name it, has been allocated to a tune of 81 billion. However, the decline in my budget is most likely to present challenges of the sustainability of activities, especially under the new department, arising from the rationalized entities. You know very well that under the coffee sector, the European Declaration on the Afforestation actually had pronounced itself that we should have registered all coffee farmers this year, but then we extended to next year, up to April. And the ministry is already grappling with the money to register coffee farmers. So far, statistics indicate that they've not even reached 50% of the coffee farmers. The process is ongoing, but they're struggling with financing. Recently, I was in that with some of them. I think that some of the grants gotten from ABI and other are done. Now they're looking for more funding here and there. So it's a big issue that we may risk. And you know, EU imports over 70% of our coffee, and it's our biggest coffee kind of taker. So it's a big challenge that this man allocated possibly may not sufficiently address this challenge of especially coffee farmer registration. Secondly, is the issue of climate change, natural resource, environment and water management program. We commend the government for establishing a robust regulatory and institutional framework to address climate change-related aspects. The implementation of some of these climate policies, alongside the recent launch of the carbon credit market regulations, clearly demonstrates the government's ongoing commitment to climate action. We are really happy for this because we've been having a lot of masqueraders, or buyers of carbon, but we didn't have a policy in place. But with this regulation, we are happy that government came in and there's that guidance. And we understand that more investors in carbon markets are going to come and genuinely invest money in this sector. Furthermore, we recognize the successful mobilization of an additional $52 million out of the targeted $500 million in the financial year 2024-2025. This is as that was as of 2024. And we are encouraged by the prospects of tripling this mobilization in this financial year. However, we are concerned that these world-developed climate policies may remain aspirational without tangible realization on the ground. Vividly, 51% of the cut towards the natural resource and climate change and use program from 744 billion for this in this current financial year to 364 billion in the new financial year, representing a budget cut of almost 379 billion, underscores this reality. Remember, this program had achieved an impressive 91% compliance score for climate responsive budgeting, the National Budget Framework paper, that is for the financial year 2025-26. Of course, from 55% in the current financial, which is soon ending. Such a drastic cut is likely to undermine the incentives and mechanisms necessary for effective climate action, especially for the most vulnerable population facing climate-related disasters. Remember that Uganda ranks 12th globally as a least prepared country to adopt climate change impacts.
We all know that government has prioritized the sector under the ATMs, the new growth strategy that we have. That is the one we envision to transform our economy from the current 53 billion USDs to 500 billion by 2040. And we see that tourism has made a significant contribution to our economy, specifically to the GDP. We see that its contribution has risen from 4.7% in 2022 to about 5.5% in 2023. And this is about contributing about 10.6 trillion. And we know that the potential the sector holds is really huge. We see that the number of international tourism receipts we get from tourism have also increased to 3.8 trillion in 2023 from 2.5 trillion in 2022. We know that government has also made several initiatives. For example, construction of very many roads that connect to different tourist attractions. We see the government has made effort in advertising the sector. Abroad, we've recently seen the Poate that has been concluded, and it has brought very many people to the country to see what we have to offer in that kind of sector. But despite this, we see that the budget for this tourism program only stands at 0.6% of the entire budget for 2025-2026. And this is just 427 billion. Whereas it's an increase from the current financial year where we have 289 billion, we still feel like it's so little for us to achieve what we want to achieve from the sector. The NDP4 proposed that the sector should be, or the program should be allocated UGX 464 billion in the current financial year, and we see that there is a shortfall. So we know that government usually urges that tourism, whenever it puts money in probably UNRWA, that's money for tourism. When roads are constructed and connecting to areas where we have these tourism attractions, then tourism is being boosted. But we really want to see tangible money going into the sector, because that's the only way we are going to be able to get more from a sector that is really promising. We know that this underinvestment is posing a significant challenge to the sector's ability to realize its transformative potential. And therefore, we encourage government, in order to unlock the sector's potential, to ensure that the allocations, at least those that are embedded in the NDP4, are exactly what we get in the budget. Because we know tourism, agriculture, these are key sectors we cannot do away with. And with the new revenue target we have of 37 trillion, we know that tourism has the potential to give us something to contribute to that. So we encourage the government to increase the money to the sector so that we can be able to realize the gains that we are talking about, and we see other countries getting out of that.
We are still concerned with the high rates of new payables from Ugandan shillings, 10.502 trillion in the financial year 2022-2023 to Ugandan shillings, 13.814 trillion in the financial year 2023-2024, representing a 32% increase. This includes an additional increment of Ugandan shillings 6.639 trillion attributed to inadequate budgeting, cash flows constraints, and competing government demands. Delayed payments and rapid accumulation of arrears lead to interests, which increase government's fiscal obligations and pose a threat to private sector business ability to sustain their daily operations. Our analysis on the accumulation of domestic arrears indicates that an increase in budget allocation from Ugandan shillings 0.2 trillion to Ugandan shillings 1.4 trillion significantly reduced payment duration of outstanding domestic arrears from 54 years to now averagely 10 years. Although this is commendable, an annual build-up of 32%, as was the case last year, undermines all efforts to settle comprehensively these outstanding domestic areas. It is therefore important that the areas strategy is completely adhered, especially the Section 21, subsection 2 of the Public Finance Management Act 2015, that prohibits a vote to take any credit from a local company unless it has the capacity to pay from the approved budget estimates by the Parliament. Because we have come to realize that most of the time, governments, MDAs, end up acquiring areas when they don't have resources to pay for the areas attained. So the Section 21, subsection 2, emphasizes that. So we call upon the government to ensure that they do adhere to that section. Another issue we have come to realize is the inadequate support of the manufacturing sector, or the manufacturing. The manufacturing sector is significant not just in redirecting our trade position, but also in the provision of the much needed jobs in Uganda. In the upcoming budget, the manufacturing program, with an allocation of Ugandan shillings 311.81 billion, is the second smallest of all the programs. For the ATMs, as my colleague was trying to highlight what ATM stands for the ATMs to be effective in delivering the tenfold growth, there is a need to reinforce them with manufacturing. We commend the government for increasing allocation to Ugandan National Bureau of Standards from Ugandan shillings 55.9 billion to Ugandan shillings 133.8 billion. However, more needs to be done to extend the affordable and sustainable electricity to manufacturing zones. Uganda Revenue Authority should expedite the VAT returns for manufacturers. We know that the value-added tax has the two components of the input and the output VAT. So when they benefit from the output VAT minus the input VAT, they're supposed to get their returns. But we have come to realize that the process for them to benefit from that is delayed. So we are recommending that Uganda Revenue Authority should expedite the VAT returns for manufacturers. And vocational training actors should broaden skills development in areas in line with the program, needs, and the UDB should increase support to the manufacturers with lower cost credit at a single-digit rate. The sector, although growing, still needs government support for its full potential to be achieved. Another issue which we have realized is that there is inadequate prioritization of trade and investment promotion. We applaud the government for the Ugandan shillings 100 billion allocated to the commercial diplomacy. However, this is still inadequate to create the desired levels of results. Considering the growing preference for protectionist ideas, trade and investment promotion is crucial for our economic fortune as a country. We call upon all stakeholders to comprehensively support trade and investment promotion by aggressively popularizing the existing opportunities we have as a country, then ensure efficient investment enrollment processes. There is a need to align some of our foreign service objectives to comprehensively address the trade and investment needs of Uganda. Our military operations in the Central African Republic, DRC, and the South Sudan, among others, should support trade promotion for export growth. The local investors should be supported, and efforts to broaden linkage between foreign capital provision and local investors needs require attention. So for us, we see that even when you look at the aspect of trade and investment, if we want to see benefit from the ATMs, we need to support the trade and investment arena. But also when it comes to the promotion of our trade items and services within Uganda by our ambassadors, all those are supposed to be called the trade or commercial attaches within our embassies. They should be supported beyond the finance, but also even be given targets when it comes to the issues we want to sell within those countries where they are representing the country.